Thank you for joining us for this edition of Small Business Breakthroughs, presented by the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. We are also presented in partnership with the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, the DEC, as we call it, and that's where I am today. Has a lot of amenities, a lot of different things that support small business owners and entrepreneurs that are kind of looking to find an office space and need some assistance to kind of grow and do different things like that. The DEC has been around for over 15 years here in Dublin and does a great job in terms of providing space for individuals. So there's a variety of offices here that individuals can rent. There are softer wall offices like this. There are harder wall offices. There are cubicles. There's actually even a virtual setting that you can be a member of the DEC. And the great thing about the DEC is it's not only the office space, it's the supports, the community. It's bringing everybody that has this entrepreneurial endeavors and working, that they can pull us together, they can connect with other entrepreneurs and have that kind of peer support that I think really helps entrepreneurs grow. So if you are interested in more information on the DEC, I would encourage you to go to DEC in Dublin.com. So today we are excited to have Stephanie Hall. She is the director of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program at Columbus State, but it's also much broader than that. And we'll talk about that as we go on. If you have been a frequent listener to Small Business Breakthroughs, you've seen Stephanie and some graduates over the last couple of years. We always kind of bring them on in the spring and kind of showcase what's going on. But I thought today would be interesting that we could just talk about the actual classes, the sessions, so that if you're interested in the program, you have an idea what goes on in the sessions. So what we'll do today is we're going to talk about how you get in and what's involved and all that, but we're also going to kind of look at the individual sessions. So we'll kind of group them into pieces because I think they work in groups. So we'll kind of do that and get an idea. And if you are interested in that, then we'll give you the contact information to get a hold of Stephanie and her team so that you can participate this year. So Stephanie, thank you for being here. We're excited about this year's 10,000 Small Businesses class.
I know. Mike, thanks so much for having me back on. It's always so fun to come and chat a little bit. And I don't, we haven't really um, taken the time to like dive into the modules before, right? So I think I'm excited to talk a little bit more in depth about the program itself, which is good because, we're a really intensive program. So I think it's good, to kind of talk through some of this, but always happy to be on the small business breakthroughs and any chance I get to talk about 10,000 small businesses.
Let's talk at first about kind of the history of the program, the history of the program here at Columbus State, as well as what it's going to take for individuals to apply and participate in what's all involved.
Sure. No, that's great. So the Goldman Sachs, let me just start by saying the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, we are our program is based at Columbus State Community College. So we host the classes and we teach everything at Columbus State. But we are grant funded by the Goldman Sachs Foundation. So it is a national program that's taught at community colleges and then in some places in kind of like a hybrid blended model across the country. So we have on the ground site locations that are taught at colleges like Columbus State, really from coast to coast. There is also a national program that is taught where if you happen to be a small business owner who is not within a footprint of one of our on the ground locations, you can apply to the national cohort, which is they bring all of those small business owners to New York for the very opening and the very closing, and the rest of those sessions are taught online. So everybody that goes through the program, whether you're in New Orleans or West Virginia or Columbus or Cleveland, you're receiving the exact same program and it's the exact same curriculum so that you really kind of have this network of small business owners who have gone through the program that you can really share those experiences with. And you know that they have had the same training and information that you have. So yeah, so here in Columbus, we are part of what we call the Southwest Ohio Initiative. So we host a cohort here in Columbus each fall from September through December. Our partners at Sinclair College, they host in Dayton, they host a cohort in the summer. So they just launched their cohort um, on the 7th. So just last week, started their summer cohort. And then our partners at Cincinnati State host a cohort in the winter months, which is really kind of January to April. So it's that winter spring. We share, so our 3 site locations, we operate collectively almost as one. We share faculty between our 3 colleges and we share business support services. So all of the faculty that teach each one of these modules that we'll get into, dig into a little bit later, come from either Columbus State, Cincinnati State, or Sinclair College. Now here, in Columbus, we kicked off, we've been going for a while now. So we're entering cohort 7 is what we're recruiting for. We launched our first cohort, Mike, as you can remember, because you were involved in that too, launched our first cohort in 2019 with phenomenal small business owners who we still keep in touch with. And yeah, we've been chugging along through the pandemic and through classroom to virtual and back again, chugging along. And here we are now with cohort 7. Crazy how the time has flown.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is that, like you said, I mean, it has continued. So there
Yeah.
are graduates that went through in this particular program. Now, that, like you said, there's a national, which is kind of
Mhm.
virtual, but through the pandemic, it didn't stop because there was
Nope.
still need for these businesses to want to grow and
Oh,
participate.
absolutely.
And so it went virtual. But I know that a lot of times, and we've had this happen too,
Mhm.
where you go through the virtual piece and you find that it works really well and you kind of decide to stick with that. But the thing I like about this program is it didn't do that. It said, okay, well, we're going to get back to the face to face,
Yep.
because I think that that's valuable. Um, and I know you can make connections virtually, but I think it's
Yep.
valuable to be able to make that connection both with the faculty, with the team, and with the other entrepreneurs in a face.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think it was great that we had the ability, what was it? It was like the buzzword of 2020, right? So we had the ability to pivot and go virtual, which really gave us the opportunity to meet small business owners where they were at during that time when everything was in such a state of flux, right? And I think that's great. Like you said, you can make arguments for, doing things virtual. It's a little bit more flexible on time, right? But I think what you lose with that is being in that classroom and really making those solid connections with other business owners. Because when we host our classes, we're in the classroom pretty much every Friday, all day long from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. So you really kind of curate and get to know this built-in support system that I just think is a little bit different, when you're doing something like that face to face versus virtually. And not to discount any of those virtual cohorts, they were amazing. And we've been fortunate to be able to bring some of those people back and host events where, people can kind of come together in person now. But that was one of the real reasons, we all felt it was important to kind of go back to that model since we have the ability to do so.
And that's a nice thing about the program too. And you can talk a little bit about this is that
Mhm.
you have the classes
Yeah,
and I don't know how many we've got here, but there's a ton of classes
yeah,
over the course of the fall.
about
And
9 or so. Yeah,
and it's really, really good. But it's not okay, once you're done, you're done. You
right.
go on off and do your business, which you will do, but
Mhm.
there's a whole alumni network and different events and stuff that y'all put on
Oh,
for
absolutely.
them.
Yeah, it's funny because we actually just held um last week. I'm like losing track of my dates, right?
Yeah.
It was just on Friday. I already feel like it was so long ago, but it was just on Friday. We held our first alumni clinic of 2025. So, the cool thing about our program, and one of the things that I like the most is, so people that are going through, small business owners that go through, you're a part of you're a part of your cohort that goes through the program. But then not only that, you're a part of a larger group of small business owners in Columbus, and the surrounding metro areas that have gone through the program. And then part of Dayton and Cincinnati, because we're all kind of in that. So, we do a lot to try to bring alumni from those three sites together, to network, facilitate connections, that sort of thing. But we're definitely not a program that you go through it and then we wish you the best of luck and, been nice knowing you. No, we really keep coming back, and we really do a lot to, bring people back together. So like I said, we just held an alumni clinic that was open to any alumni that wanted to participate. So we even had um alumni come in who were part of that national cohort that online that went through the program before we existed in Columbus. So it's nice to have those people kind of come back in and really, integrate with the other alumni in there too. And plus it's like, once you go through this program and you're doing this every week for so many weeks, like these are friends, right? Like these are just people that you want to see again. So it's always a lot of fun, not just from a learning standpoint, but how are you doing? How are things going? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I always think that it's really important for existing business owners. So,
Hmm.
it's a small business development center. We put on trainings, we do a variety of different things,
Yeah.
all kinds of different
Oh,
people.
you guys do so much.
But, but as an existing business owner
Mhm.
that maybe has been through those early trenches, has done a lot
Yeah.
of these types of things, that peer to peer, those connections really is what gives them the value and allow
Yeah.
grow. Now you got great content, which is super, and they can apply that, but it's being able to say, okay, you know, entrepreneur
Yeah.
X, how did you deal with this?
I know, right?
And I think that, and then after the course, because then you kept connection.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point you bring up, right? So we do have, and we haven't hit on this yet. So for small business owners that apply to our program, we have a very structured like criteria that we look for small business owners to join our program. So we are tailored specifically for that kind of mid-tier growth focused small businesses. So we want small business owners who have been in businesses that have been in business for at least 2 years, have at least two employees, and have at least $75,000 in revenue, ideally in the most recent fiscal year. And what that does, we really try to curate that population in the room because and the most important thing really is, you've survived it, and now what's your next step? How are you going to grow? It's all about growth. So when you're in that room with other, peers and other small business owners who were at that same point, you have there's so much more to share there, because you're kind of everyone at that point has kind of lived that startup experience and, like the struggles around, getting to that point. So everybody then is on that same place.
And we're going to talk about the qualifications in a second,
Yeah.
but I think that's important too. So, um, as we talk about the qualifications, you've mentioned them. So,
Yeah.
2 years in business,
Mhm.
uh, two employees,
Correct.
and at least 75K in
Mhm.
revenue in the most recent year. Uh, I think that, again, as somebody who's going to qualify and participate in this
Mhm.
program, what's really important is that the other people are going to at least be at that minimum threshold,
Yes.
and we've done programs in the past where we've had to be really careful where, you know, we didn't want to have, okay, here's a startup who doesn't have the experience and hasn't gone through a lot of this sitting next to somebody who has. And that causes, you know, challenges because again, it's just a different point in the life cycle where they're at. And I think that having, these qualifications to say, okay, you got to be in business, you need to be a business owner because that's how you're going to, it's built for you in that. So again, if you have somebody who's kind of pre-venture or just getting off the ground and things like that, you got to kind of build the business up so that you're ready to come into that. And that's
Yes.
where, again, our program or other programs can assist.
Exactly. And you're the person, that's where we like to refer people back to, go and work with some of the programming and things that there are at the that the SBDC is doing. And there's other programs around the city too, but I think you all have a very good thumb on, helping to get small business owners where they need to be. And then, it's like I listed out, our minimum criteria there. So that is the very minimum criteria. And I will say that uh the majority of the businesses that we have come in are well above that minimum, right? So it's not, we, so the revenue criteria that was dialed back a little bit as a result of the pandemic, right? Because so many businesses were just impacted through no fault of anything that they were doing. So we wanted to be able to still touch and be able to help all of the businesses that we could. And we've kind of left it at that range. It used to be, I want to say it was like about 150 when we first started was that revenue criteria. But what I found, so even though we'll have cohorts with, businesses that are at that early stage, which is great, but we also have multi-million dollar businesses that join the cohort as well. And I think just regardless of where you are, maybe with, employees or revenue, the fact that you have been in business and that you have sustained for those few years kind of gives you a different perspective. So we find that even when we have those smaller businesses working with everybody has something different to bring to the table, right? So there is still that opportunity for that peer-to-peer learning and that connection.
Okay. So we've already talked about requirements, so we don't have to have a specific session on that. But remember, it's a minimum 2 years in business.
Mhm.
It is at least 2 employees and 75K in revenue. And the 2 employee piece can be the
Yeah.
owner and an employee. That's two.
Yes.
And
So
the employee could be a 1099.
yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, when we're looking at that ownership piece, it really comes down to like how do you get it, I should say like 2 FTE, right? So you as the owner full time in your business, I would assume. So those other positions, like maybe you have a few part-time people, or you have some contract employees, or it could be one full-time employee, just so that you have that documentation, so that we can kind of see that there is that, 2 FTE FTE piece there. Part of the reason for that is, and again, we'll get into this, but it's an intensive program. And when you're in the classroom taking the course, we want you to be able to fully remove yourself from the business, not have to worry about continuity and what's going on, but we want to make sure that there's somebody else that's running that for you so that you can focus on growing that business instead of, working in that business for the day.
Right. And so let's shift real quick
Yeah,
to the application process. So you guys are in the application window now for
we
the
are. We
cohort.
are.
Mhm.
We are currently accepting applications for our 7th cohort, which starts in September. The application process itself is two-part. So the first part of the application, anybody can go in and fill that out. It probably, if you know your business, it will probably take you 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most, to fill that first part out. And what that's really going to ask you is, what's your business name? How long have you been in business? What are your revenues for the last, few years? Just some of that basic information. Once we get that back, and that's reviewed, we then, if you're qualified based on your answers, if you're qualified for the program, we'll then send you a second part of that application. And that's where we're asking for some of that documentation to support your answers from that first part. So we'll ask for, you know, several years worth of 2 years worth of financial statements plus a year to date, your most recent business tax return, legal entity certification, just some of those basic documents that we can then use to make sure that everything is as it should and that we have the right group of people in that space. Once that second part of the application is complete, and that's, we're still accepting part ones. Our final deadline for that second part for everything to be done is June the 12th. So we've got about a month still left, which is plenty of time for anybody that might be interested in applying. But as soon as you complete that second part and everything looks good, we'll reach out and schedule an interview. So we bring everybody in on Columbus State's campus on July the 22nd to have interviews. We'll be running interviews, several interview panels all day long. And what it is really is just maybe 25, 30 minutes where you'll kind of sit down with a few members of our team and just kind of talk about your business. It's really less an interview and more of a informal conversation around you and your business. So it's not definitely not something that should be stress inducing by any means, but it's for us, it's a really fun day because we go through looking at applications and talking to people virtually, and then finally we get to bring everyone in and actually meet them in person. So
So you have the interviews,
uh-huh,
and that's in person.
correct.
And did you mention, okay, so from that point,
Mhm.
when would they kind of be notified that, hey, you're in or be invited in,
Yeah,
or
that's a great question.
would you?
So we host, I
Or
mean,
what?
everything is so backed up, right? The cohort starts in September, and here we are doing interviews in July. There's a lot of bits and pieces that go back, because we work closely with the Goldman Sachs Foundation. After interviews, we compile everybody's notes and send everything back to kind of solidify what that cohort's going to look like. It usually takes a couple weeks after that for us to send things and get things back. And then we reach out to everyone and kind of let them know whether or not they've been accepted into the program. I'm going to say that this year probably it's going to be early August, early to, early mid kind of August. And, regardless of what the decision might be, you will definitely hear, but yeah, everybody that goes through the interview, we reach back out and communicate with everyone, regardless of what that outcome might look like.
Yeah, good. So it does give you enough time, but I
Oh
would
yeah.
say that if you get to that interview process
Mhm.
and you meet these qualifications, especially if you're kind of over these qualifications,
Yes.
the first class is September 4th. So you might want to kind of pencil that in
I know,
so that
right?
you can
Yes.
start being prepared to do that. And we're going to talk about that here in a second too.
Yeah, and that is what, when we're talking to people, in interviews, because we, as people are applying and as we're setting up interviews, we're constantly sending our schedule out. Like, here's our schedule. Have you seen the schedule? Here's the schedule again, so that we make sure that everybody knows what those dates are. I can say that by the time we get to interviews, we're asking people, do you know of any of these dates that you might miss? And most people are like, I've already penciled them in my calendar just in case, which is perfect for, it's like it's fantastic because they're thinking positively, we're thinking positively. Um, so it's yeah, very important.
So let's do this. Where do they need to go to apply and get more information?
Sure. So the easy way to go and apply is 10ksbapply.com. Will take you directly to the application. If you go to the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses at Columbus State website, that will, and you can just Google 10,000 Small Businesses Columbus State and it'll pop up. Sometimes those addresses get a little bit lengthy there, but if you just Google Columbus State 10,000 small businesses, you'll find our website. And there, it will give you a link to the application. It will give you information about all of our faculty who's teaching, the different modules, what the schedule looks like. So it'll give you a lot more information specifically about our Columbus cohort.
Okay, great. So we will revisit that before we leave. But
Yeah,
like you said, the application's available. The application's not horribly onerous, so you should be able to at least get the app in,
absolutely.
get things moving. And you know, this list of classes that's available on the website
It
too.
is.
So if you want to know, we're going to go through this, but if you want to know kind of when things start, what's on what day, different things like that. That's available on the website too. So I encourage you to go check that out. Mhm. So before we jump into that, I have kind of two questions. One, um, is there any restrictions on competing businesses? So, and then along with that, maybe this is there any, how do you guys in the class deal with this potential sharing of confidential information in the class setting at least?
That's a really great question. And I can say to date, we have not had any issues that I'm aware of anyway. Nothing that's been brought to our attention about conflicting interest, right? And we do have, there are always businesses that are in the same industry, right? That go through the program. What I can tell you is, so as you come into the program, maybe it's a cohort, we look to host cohorts of ideally we'd like about 30 in the classroom, maybe 25 to 30. Um, and so while you get to know all of those other people that are in the room, we also divide it into small groups. So everybody kind of is a part of a small group. So you get to know your group of, 5 or 6, however it might be, very well. Those groups are crafted a little bit more so it's not like everybody who's in marketing is in this group, so we really kind of, because what we are after with some of this is diversity in thought. And even though businesses might be in different industries, there's still those intersection points and different ways that people can learn from each other. So we try to put those groups together so that they're as diverse as possible. But that's not to say, there's sometimes where we're going through things where we are talking very industry specific, and we might pull people like everybody who is in the hospitality industry. We're going to put you in a group today, and everybody who is doing creative, you're in a group, or construction, however that might be. We've not really had an issue where there has been any kind of competition, or one of the things that one of our alumni, this came up one time a couple years back, and one of our alumni was like, what, there's plenty of business to go around for everyone. I'm here to help and learn from my peers and everything like that, so I'm not as concerned about being in competition with other people, which is a great attitude to take. But I think so our first two modules, orientation and module 1, we spend a lot of time really building a class culture and leaning in on what are the rules of the classroom, and what do people, how do we build that trust and knowing that it's a safe space for people to talk, right? Because I think small business owners so often are operating kind of in a silo or a vacuum where you don't really have somebody maybe to just vent to, or who understands what you're going through. So this kind of, we want to create that environment where people can feel comfortable to, bring these things to the table. And a lot of times, we're not talking about things specifically, like looking at customers and work, but more about how are you working in your business? How's your team working for you? And that's not really, that's a universal issue.
Sure. Sure. So let's say that somebody applied
Uh-huh.
and one of two things happens. They apply, they get an invite, and then
Mhm.
they start really looking at the calendar and they say, I can't probably
Yeah.
work, or they are good and you guys want to try to keep it about 30 or so in the cohort.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't get the invite even though they kind of qualify. If that happens, I don't know. Is there a possibility based on the application they put in with you that they could theoretically go to Cincinnati in the winter, or go to Sinclair in the summer? Or do they have to?
Yeah, so a number of things happen, right? And let me just say, while we look to host cohorts of around, if we have 35 amazing small business owners who are qualified, are ready to, the interview goes well, we'll have a cohort of 35. If we have 40, I think we can have 40. Once we start pushing after 40, we may have to look at like capacity of our space. But for us, the more the better, right? So we definitely wouldn't look at turning people away or that sort of thing. That said, like you said, things happen, right? We're all human. The way that our program works, we really do. And this is one of the reasons why we are constantly like, have you seen the schedule? Do you have conflicts? We really like to hold those absences to a minimum of two. We understand that things happen. And so, we try to be as flexible as possible with that. But if you are getting ready to join the cohort and you already know off the bat that you're going to be on vacation or miss like 3 or 4, I think that's when it's a conversation around maybe this isn't the right time for you to go through the program. We are able to defer applicants to the next site location that would be hosting. So for us here in Columbus, if we have a small business owner who goes through the interview, is accepted, and then realizes they can't, we could defer them to Cincinnati, which unfortunately geographically speaking is probably not the easiest commute, right? From Columbus to
Especially in the winter.
Cincinnati. I'm sorry,
Especially in the winter.
especially in the winter. Unless maybe you live on, that side of the city. Everything. We've had people that have made that trip before. They've had, a son or we've got a lot like, oh, my son goes to Ohio State, so now I'm going to be able to come and like see him every single week. So, many different reasons why that could happen, but we could defer someone to Cincinnati. If someone decided, kind of went through the interview process, and we've had this before too, where something happens, maybe it's, the business wins an amazingly new big contract, right? And then they just don't have the bandwidth to fit this in. We absolutely welcome anybody to reapply for the next cohort. So it's never you missed your shot. If it doesn't work out, please, come back, apply again.
Right. And so let's say that I'm an owner and I have a partner.
Yes.
So can both of us go through at the same time? One, two, can either of us go through? So I show up one week and the other person shows up one week.
Yes. Unfortunately, no and no. um, so anybody that applies to the program, you'll kind of understand this if you're applying. So as we only allow one owner from each business to go through the program because it is grant funded and it's a hefty amount of money that Goldman Sachs Foundation spends to offer, the tuition to these programs because it is of no cost to the participant who goes through. If you apply and you're accepted, it doesn't cost you anything, but just the dedication of your time. So we want to be able to make sure that we are able to share those resources as widely as possible to touch as many small business owners as possible. So yes, the application is very tailored specifically to an individual and not to the business itself. And it also kind of comes down to, like I mentioned before, that orientation in module 1 are very heavy on building culture and that structure in the classroom. And so it's that person who's going to be there each time that's going to, forge those relationships with the others that are in the classroom. To have people swapping in and out would be kind of difficult. That said, small business owners that go through the program, we pair you up. You work with a business advisor one-on-one through the duration of the program. Now, that business advisor, their role is to help you craft this plan for growth, craft this growth plan that you'll come out of the program with, and kind of, facilitate your growth development through the program. They will meet with you at your place of business throughout the duration of that program. And so at those meetings, if there's a partner or somebody else, they can by all means be at those meetings with your business advisor. We just can't invite them into the classroom.
Got it. Okay, great. So we keep teasing the actual sessions. So so we're going to talk about the individual sessions. I do want to have you speak real quickly to the actual curriculum.
Mhm.
This has been developed by Babson College, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
so again, it's pretty comprehensive. So you want to talk just a little bit about
Yeah.
piece of it?
So Babson College in Massachusetts, they're the top ranked entrepreneurial college. And they are they're the ones who have designed and developed this curriculum. We ask for feedback from small business owners after every module. Every time it's taught, we ask for feedback, and that feedback is funneled back to Babson. And I can promise you that this curriculum is updated and modified and kept relevant from cohort to cohort to cohort. So there's always tweaks from one time we teach it to the next time that we teach it to make sure that what we're offering and the way that we're offering it is as relevant as possible to the small business owners that are coming through. So Babson keeps a very close connection on the curriculum, and then they work with our faculty to specifically train them on the delivery of this curriculum. So while we have faculty who are experts in the different modules, then they're also have also worked with colleagues at Babson to kind of make sure that everybody is on the same page with how things are being delivered.
Okay, great. So this fall, autumn, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
um, begins September 4th. So most of these classes are all on Friday. You've mentioned
Correct.
they run from typically 8 to 5, 5:30,
Yep.
like that. However, there are two sets of these that there's a Thursday, Friday,
Correct.
and that
So our very opening, the orientation and mod one are very opening. So we're kind of sandwiched. Our program is sandwiched with Thursday, Friday. We are a Thursday, Friday at the beginning and a Thursday, Friday at the end. Everything else throughout the cohort is really one day a week on a Friday. And I think there is one in there. We have a clinic, two clinics. We've paired them together. They happen to be on a Wednesday just because of faculty availability. And we can, talk about that a little bit more. But for the most part, it's every Friday. We do start in the morning at 8 a.m. We cater everything food wise for everyone coming in. So we start our day at 8 o'clock with breakfast and invite people to come in and just use that first half an hour of the day to um, have breakfast with everyone, get settled in, catch up with people, just an informal sort of how you doing time. We start the program promptly at 8:30. So we kick off and we are doing our stuff at 8:30 in the morning, and we will run until about 5:30 in the evening. But we have snacks brought in and lunch, so you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat when you're in the classroom.
yeah, that's great. I've been to different trainings where they give you a lunch break. They
Yes.
they don't give you lunch. So I'm like,
No,
that's,
I know by the time we end, my team is like, where am I going to get lunch at now that I've like, finished the program?
so September 4th, we
Correct.
have the orientation.
Mhm.
Then September 5th, we have the first class and a welcome reception. So that one runs a little longer.
Yes, we do have a welcome reception at the end of that first Friday where we invite everyone to come. We invite alumni to come. We invite families, your support networks, people in the small business ecosystem. Mike, I hope we'll see you there. Your team, absolutely. So everybody that really kind of plays a part in supporting small business owners in Columbus, we always invite them to attend that welcome reception just to kind of celebrate and kick off that cohort. And then we do the same sort of thing at the end. We have a graduation celebration once everything is complete, where we are really just celebrating the small business owners and their amazing accomplishments.
Right. So the September 5th
Mhm.
session
Yeah.
uh, is probably the best session because I'm
Truth.
and but like you said, we do have a lot of our team that is
Mhm.
sprinkled in through there as participants on panels
Yeah.
or kind of role playing groups
Mhm.
and things like that. So but we definitely support that, and we're always excited to be part of that. So module two, really kind of the first one, we're talking about growth and
Correct.
opportunity.
Yeah, so that first module, and like I said, that's the one, where you come in, we host a small business resources panel. So we always bring in, um, you know, individuals to talk about important resources that small business owners should know. So, a lot of people have connections and so you don't know what you don't know. So we just want to get as much there as possible. So that first one is really just kind of like diving in and looking at you and your business and, bringing in those resources. And then the real meat of that program, you're right, kind of starts in that second module. And that's where we jump into, really looking at like finding your growth. Like, what does that growth look like for you, for your business? And really kind of looking at different ways and opportunities that you can craft and seize upon appropriate growth for your business.
And that's really what we're trying to do with this whole program is to
Exactly.
try to allow the business owner to one, take a look at what they have,
Hmm.
look at what the opportunities are, and build a growth plan, which is what
Exactly.
we end up with at the end of this.
Exactly. And I probably should have been more clear about that at the beginning. So that really is the crux of the program is we are working with small business owners to recognize an opportunity for growth within their business, like a new and unique opportunity. Maybe that is you have a brick and mortar restaurant, but you are going to look into adding a food truck to your I mean, it could be anything. Maybe it's a restaurant who wants to add some sort of, Uber Eats or, be a part of, something like that. It could be any number of things, whatever that growth is specific to your business. And then throughout the duration of the program, as you're working through all of these different modules, at the end, you come out with an actionable growth plan. And maybe that's something where you can jump immediately, like after the program finishes and start doing that. And it could also be something where you have a few steps that, like, okay, well, my first phase is hiring X and so people, and my second phase is jumping off here. So it may be more of a phased approach to what that growth plan looks like. But
Well, I mean, that's the nice thing is you can
yeah.
customize it for your business.
Yeah.
You're still going to do these things, but when
Mhm.
you do them, really applies to what you've got coming up.
Yes. And everything that we do, all of the, as you're going through the curriculum, all of the work and examples and everything is specifically focused on your business. So it's not case studies and hypotheticals. I mean, there could be some of that, as you're reading through different things, but the actual meat and the work is 100% focused on your business. So while there is this growth plan that you come out with at the end, there's also those points, like you might come out of a module on marketing and say, like, well, my gosh, now I know what I'm going to do to, you know, help market my business a little bit better. So there are immediate takeaways throughout the program as well.
Right. So now we're up to September 19th. So what's interesting here is, and maybe this doesn't mean that much to folks, but so the 19th we have financial statements workshop.
Uh-huh.
Next week we have a module on money and work
Hmm.
money and metrics.
Correct.
Then the next week we have a clinic
Uh-huh.
on lenders. So what one for just my
Yeah.
difference between a workshop, a module, and a clinic. And then it looks like those three kind of tie in together pretty well.
Yeah. So for us, modules are typically those full day, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Clinics, like the financial statements clinic, it's going to be a little bit shorter in duration. That one usually ends around 3 o'clock or so. So they're not quite as long. And then when we do like in the lender clinic, I think that's like 3 or 4 hours. So those clinics might be a little bit shorter in duration. Those modules, though, are the ones that last all day. But you're right. So we had, we go from growth and then we are financial, the financial statements, the module 3 around money and metrics, and then to a certain degree that you are the lender. And those are all really around financial literacy. So it's, really, at first with, on the 19th, we dig into understanding your financial statements, which a lot of people maybe don't understand their financial statements maybe as well as they should, or let's face that elephant in the room, right? And really kind of learn how to do some of this financial analysis and all of that. Then, the next week after that, we are flipping into money and metrics. So you're learning more about, financial forecasting and how to, data analysis and some of that around, the money. So you are the lender clinic. Still tying into that money thing, but that's more of a hands-on clinic where the participants in the classroom are really evaluating loan applications. So it's kind of like, what are lenders looking at when you submit that loan application, and how might you best submit that, giving them, to position yourself in the best possible light, right? And that's a fun clinic where we have some people come in and help us with that.
Yeah, the thing I like about that
Uh-huh.
is that we work with people that are trying to get financing and different things like that. And I ran a venture capital association way back in the day, and I have people coming and trying to, pitch to investors and stuff.
Yeah.
And but to really make this work, I think you got to flip it so that
Mhm.
you're thinking in terms of what do I have here that's going to get them to be interested in lending, be interested in investing, or
Yeah.
whatever. And I think so many people don't do that. They'll write maybe a business plan or they do something, but a lot of it's coming from their perspective.
Right.
And I always tell them, I mean, why would they lend to you? Why would
Right.
somebody be interested in lending or taking their money and putting it into
Mhm.
your business? And you got to look at it from the other side. Too
Exactly.
many people don't do that, and that's the beauty of this because you get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing in that clinic, is really having people to jump in the lender's shoes and evaluate, like, why is this a good application? What might make this better, so that you can kind of become more self-aware of what your applications might look like and what you nailed it.
Yeah. And the money component of this is critical because I
Mhm.
do see a lot of people that may have successful businesses that don't understand their financials.
Mhm.
So they may be growing,
Yeah.
but maybe they're not growing as much, or
Yeah.
maybe they're not bringing in as much, or they're getting revenue, but because their expenses, they don't really understand that, so they're not making as much as they could
Mhm.
be making. So understanding your financials are really critical
Yeah.
business
And
move forward. Mm.
to that point too, we even have, when we talk about some of those larger businesses. So even if you are a business owner and maybe you have someone that does all of that for you, right? Like, great, very well the case. But I think it's still important for you to have that understanding of what, so that what questions to ask about your money, and what questions to ask your accountant and those people that are preparing some of these things for you, just so that you have a better literacy around that.
I mean, I always tell people it's your business. It's
Yeah.
not the accountant's business.
Right.
Do the stuff and give it to you, but you got to understand what it means, and you got to be the
Right.
says, okay, based on this, we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
So we get into module 4 and
Uh-huh.
5. That looks like we're talking about one leadership, and we're
Mhm.
talking about working with your staff, employees, etc.
Yeah. So these kind of we kind of then, shift from that financial aspect into more of that HR mode, I guess I should say. So module 4 really is you know, understanding your leadership style and how that impacts, how you lead your business, and maybe the ways that you can work with your team, understanding how you lead, like really know, you're the captain of the ship, and how does all of that fit together. And then kind of piggybacking on, after we do that, we flip into, your team, like the team that you have there supporting you, developing those employees that you have to get everyone on the same mission and everyone on the same, forward path. So those two modules then kind of marry nicely together.
Right. And as you're thinking about growth, it's important to really
Mhm.
think about how you're going to help your employees grow because they
Exactly.
grow with you. And as you bring new people on, you've got to
Mhm.
board them right and different things like that.
Yeah.
I
And
think
just,
sometimes
yeah.
small businesses, they just miss that.
Yeah.
Because again, they started out, okay, I got the one person. Okay, I can handle that and I'll teach them.
Right.
Got the 2 people. Okay, I'll still be able to teach them. You got the 10 people. You can't do that.
Yeah. And it's really just kind of, thinking about like, how do you get your whole team active and on board with this growth that you want to implement, right? And how do do you have the right people in the right positions on your team? Do you kind of need to reevaluate, like, maybe I have a gap here, maybe I need someone in this role and not necessarily in this role? Or, do the people that I have, are they doing, are they working for me now? Maybe they worked when you started your business 5 years ago, but your business is probably in a different place than it was 5 years ago. Is that still the right team for you?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go looking at looks like module 6
Uh-huh.
and the clinic, which is the following week in the morning. And
Hmm.
then in the afternoon, we have negotiations. Looks like here we're talking about primarily marketing.
Yeah. So we've made it to what, like late mid-October, and we're hitting, we've come out of HR. We're now kind of moving into marketing and selling, and we have a phenomenal instructor who comes down from Cincinnati to teach these marketing clinics for us. The marketing and selling one is really, we spend a lot of time there in module 6 talking about like, really kind of analyzing your customers' needs and who are your customers and how are you, marketing to those customers. Um, and then kind of as an extension of that, we have a clinic on digital marketing that really is focusing specifically on, you know, that business strategy around, digital marketing, because we have these 2 half-day clinics. In order to kind of keep things together, we've paired them up to make a full day on Wednesday the 29th. So we will have a digital marketing clinic in the morning, and then the afternoon we bring in a faculty member who comes to us from the Wharton School at UPenn to lead a workshop on negotiations. And that's really kind of around understanding strategies and negotiations, what negotiations might look like in different ways, to think about and approach that, which is a really good interactive session. So even those are 2 slightly different, just for the sake of you're already there, let's keep it going and we'll make a full day out of that. We just kind of paired those together for ease of scheduling.
Yeah, I have a gentleman who has a business here at the deck
Okay.
who is, I think he's kind of on his third business.
Uh-huh.
It's an IT type of business. And one of the things that he said that he had to learn very early on, as it relates to kind of this negotiation thing,
Uh-huh.
is that when you go in to meet with somebody, you need to go in professional. You need to
Mhm.
know how to interact with them. You need to know how to kind of go back and forth with them. It's not just, hey, here's my thing, sign it. We're going to go on about
Right.
business. There is a negotiation, and you, as the owner, need to understand how to do that. And I think that's what
Right.
you're going to get here.
Yeah, and it's really, kind of just breaking down not making negotiations to like some grandiose thing. I mean, we're all negotiating in our lives every moment. Anybody that has children will understand that negotiation happens 24/7. So it's just kind of, bringing it a little bit more, like not making it even such a grand thing, but kind of understanding some of those just rudimentary strategies and thoughts around like what negotiations looks like. But yeah, so that's always a really good one. Maury does a fantastic job with that.
So now we're on module 7. So we got module 7, we got a
Huh.
legal clinic, and then we have module 8, which is being bankable. So you want to talk about those and
Yeah. So module 7 really that one dives into, your business processes and really kind of mapping out that operational process within your business to make sure that things are working as they should, are as efficient as they can be. So that one is a lot of, it's a good module, where people are just like, oh, I didn't, like, and really kind of doing some mapping work. And I will say this one always comes to mind too, but when I say that we're in the classroom from 8 to 5, right? That's a long time. And there are, we do have PowerPoints and we do have lectures, but you will be up and down out of your seat, like doing things like mapping on boards. And so it's very interactive from, start to finish each day. But this workshop too, we do a lot of like up where people are mapping and going around and helping to analyze each other's process maps to kind of understand where that is. The legal clinic, that is brand new for us this year. So I have not been through this clinic here in Columbus State yet. So I won't say too much, but what we do is bring in attorneys from the area to kind of go through and just um, talk about some different legal challenges around small businesses. So more to come on that. I will know next year when we get on here, I'll have so much more to say about the legal clinic. Um, and then our module 8, after we do that, we kind of, we've gone through a lot of this stuff and now we're going to circle back to the finances again and being bankable, which really this is a great this module itself, I think, is a great module. So we take a lot of time, working with we bring in a panel to explain about different opportunities for funding, right? Because it's not always a one size fits all sort of thing. And there's opportunities for funding that people may not think about. So we do have a panel of different, people come in to talk about different, maybe it's an angel investor, maybe we have Ellen come in to talk about the Kiva program. There's so many different things that you never know where people are going to find, like, oh, I didn't know that, like that's a great source of funding. So that's kind of how we start that day. And then through that module A2, the next part of that day kind of transitions into helping participants develop a funding pitch, which is so important for anybody that wants to go and receive funding, because what we do is we help you write this pitch, and then you get the opportunity to practice it and get feedback. We have guests come in to help provide feedback on these pitches. So really the goal here is by the time you're done, like, you feel somewhat comfortable giving this pitch so that it's not such a daunting and uncomfortable sort of thing when you actually have to go and do it in real life, right? And in real time, you kind of have something there. So that whole afternoon of Mod 8 really kind of dives into what makes a good funding pitch. How do you do that? How do you bring yourself, developing that, like, quick elevator sort of around what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, you've got to be able to speak to
Hmm.
a funder,
Yeah.
whatever, and tell them about your business. And you've got to be able to clearly articulate that. And one thing that I learned when I used to run the Venture Capital Association is that, again, entrepreneurs would tell the story from their perspective of what they
Right.
important. Sometimes they get a little bit into the weeds, things
Hmm.
like that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
think about, okay, if I'm pitching to somebody on the funding side, what's important to them?
Hmm.
So if it's a bank, they got to figure out how they're going to get repaid.
Right.
That's critical for them. And if it's an investor, if it's an individual investor, I mean, you got to think about, they're taking money out of their pocket. This is their
Mhm.
money. Whether they allocate a part of their portfolio or whatever, you've got to really get them to understand what it is you're doing and how you're going to be able to generate, a return, and
Mhm.
it's sufficient for them. And because a lot of times, especially on the investor side, you've got to be able to negotiate the terms. You go to a bank, this is the rate, this is how we do it. It's an SBA 7A loan, yada, yada, yada. But, you go to an investor, you've really got to be able to do that and negotiate those terms and different things like that. And that's where I've always seen people say, well, I'm, I don't want a partner, or I don't want this and I don't want that. Well, I mean, if that's how you're going into it, you're not going to get a partner because they're
Yeah.
not going to invest. So
Yeah.
you need to understand the process and be able to articulate that.
Right.
And the
Because you're not
great
going to
thing
have
is,
half an hour to talk about it, right? Like, you got to be succinct and get across the right
absolutely.
information.
Yeah, because I mean, they're listening, and if you don't get their attention, you're done.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it's not time to fool around. Um, so so cool. So now we're to module 9A, 9B. This is the last week of the session.
It is.
It's titled Putting It All Together. And I think that's the perfect title for these things at the
Oh,
end.
it is. It is the perfect title for these. So these two modules, so much fun. Um, bittersweet a little bit because it's I mean, these are people that you have been meeting with now for weeks and weeks, right? And this is it. So in mod 9 A and B, it is a Thursday Friday. So what we're doing, in this really is with this growth plan that you've been putting together, you're developing, and then you're going to do a growth pitch around, what your plan is. So again, we're pitching, always great practice, but we're doing a lot of that there. We have a lot of other activities too, where, we'll look at things like, kind of revisiting maybe what does your exit strategy look like, which is important that a lot of people don't think about. We continue to talk about, building your network and staying in touch and talking about advocacy boards or, advocacy and advisory boards and different things like that. So in this last one, part of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 businesses, they have an advocacy arm that's 10,000 voices. And so we'll usually bring in somebody, an elected official, somebody from our local government, something like that, to talk about small business advocacy. And we'll bring in, somebody from 10 KSB Voices to talk about advocacy. So that's, another opportunity in there. This one, usually by the time we get to mod 9B, we try to end this day a little bit early. Some of it just depends on how many people we have in the room, right? And the pitches that we're doing, if we have a huge group, it might take a full day, but we close out that day then with like I said before, a graduation reception where we're just celebrating everyone's, success and journey through the program and all of that. So that close is a lot of fun. It's 2 solid days of celebration and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and like I said, it pulls everything together, clarifies some things and things like that. And I think it's
Yeah,
well, plus they've put in a lot of work here. So
a lot of
there's
work.
a lot of room for celebration there.
Absolutely.
Uh, so one thing I really encourage you, if you're interested in the program, go to the website and
Mhm.
pull down this Columbus Schedule 2025. So
Yeah.
that's what we've been looking at. That's what we've been going through.
Mhm.
So briefly, if you get down to the bottom of this,
Mhm.
there's talking about what happens in between the classes. So
Yeah.
I think it's important that an entrepreneur understand that there are requirements, not just, okay, I'm going to designate Fridays and I'm going
Right.
to go to class and I'm going to go do my thing. You know, if you look here, it says participants must complete 6 to 8 hours of out of
Mhm.
class activities every week.
Yeah.
So they need to be prepared for that. And then there's a whole list of things that they may be needing to do.
Yeah, so some of the add a class, we say the add a class activity. So each one of these modules has different things. We call it pre-work. Some of the work that you're doing around your business in advance of the module that you'll be taking, just so that you have, everybody kind of comes with some work already done so that you can dive in on the day. All of that pre-work that you're doing are things related to your business. So it's not anything that's like, why am I doing this? No, it's all very relevant to what you're doing. I've talked to different people who have gone through I was just talking to someone at our alumni clinic, and she was talking about the work that went on outside of the program. And it really comes down to one of those, like, the more you put in, the more you get out, right? And she put a heck of a lot in and she got a heck of a lot out. So, when we say 6 to 8 hours, some of it is just around that, and there could be modules where you are much more proficient than others, right? So someone who is maybe you're a retired CPA or something, right? Those financial modules may be a little bit easier for you and not really require as much work. So it kind of comes down to some of that too. Like what your strong suits are, but all of that in between work really is things that you're kind of prepping for that next week.
Absolutely. And we've already mentioned this, but once this is over,
Mhm.
then there's a variety of opportunities that'll go
Yes.
on through the year for alumni to connect uh,
Yes.
from both this program and a broader program.
Yeah, so we have alumni who still connect informally on their own. Well, I don't even know about it until I run into them. I'm like, oh yeah, we still have coffee every week. And I'm like, well, that's great. Can I come too? And but we also put on, like I said, we host alumni clinics, usually twice a year, one kind of in the spring, one in the fall, where we invite everyone back into the classroom and we'll teach a segment. So this last one was just on the alumni clinic that we did last week was around, storytelling, telling the story of your business through your numbers. So we had John Eldridge, who is our Mod 3 faculty, come in and teach that for us. It was great. We have quarterly meetups. We have alumni ambassadors who get together and like curate, meetups for everyone. So there's informal meetups and just all kinds of stuff that takes place. We have a lot of businesses that go through who do business together. We'll, work with each other. We had a couple businesses from our last cohort who just kind of teamed up and pitched to redesign the Columbus Dress for Success website, which those sorts of things are fantastic. Love hearing about those. But yeah, so people are doing all kinds of stuff together. It's great.
Great. So that sounds great. Again, I want to thank you for going through all this because I
Oh, of
think
course.
it'll be really valuable for people to understand, okay, this is what we're really getting involved in. And this is why it's important
Yeah.
because this is how I can apply this stuff to my business.
Mhm.
So I think this has been great. Can you give us again, where do people need to go
Sure.
and the timeframes
Okay.
and anything that you want to close with?
Yeah. So I can't, just to kind of close it out with what you were saying, it is, the program's intensive. I can tell you here in Columbus, our graduation rate is about 98%. It's 96% nationwide, which is, what that tells me is, yeah, it's a lot of work and people know that going into it, but they're not like losing steam and they're not dropping off. So they're getting things out of it that's making them, having them come back every week. So that kind of is a testament to, the program itself. Um, to apply, again, it's 10ksbapply.com. 10ksbapply.com will take you directly to the application. Or if you want to visit Columbus State's website, I think you can get to if you are cscc.edu/10ksb should take you directly to it. Or if you want to just Google 10,000 Small Businesses Columbus State, you'll find us. And that's where you will find specific information around, you can find a blurb on all of the modules. You'll find information around our application process. We are currently accepting applications. Our very final deadline for both parts of that application is June the 12th. So about a month from now. And then our interviews will be July the 22nd. And we are, on our website too, you can find our contact information. Anybody is more than welcome to contact me or my team. I'm SHALL34@cscc.edu. So, by all means, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to talk to people, talk through things. We just want to be really forthcoming and very transparent about what the program looks like.
Absolutely. And so say you're watching this and you're like, I don't qualify. I've not been in business for 2 years. I don't have this. Well, what I would recommend is, especially if you're in the Columbus area or if in any of these areas, you know, reach out to us at the SBDC because we can help you get prepared. If this is something you want to do, say you've been in a year, but you don't have the revenue, or you've been in a couple of
Right.
years and you don't have the revenue, let us assist you to get yourself prepped so that you can
Right.
get your business up to a point because, you know, I've had some other people that have asked me if they don't have 2 years in business, if they have not started and they
Mhm.
apply, they're not going to get in. So, you know, go ahead and reach out to us and we can do this. And I would say that the Small Business Development Center program is also a national program. So
Mhm.
there is an SBDC in Dayton. There's an SBDC in Cincinnati that you can connect with if you need to help some prepping yourself to get yourself in a position where you can be part of this down the road. So
Yeah.
encourage you to do that. So Stephanie, thank you for being here. This has been,
Oh, thank you, as always.
yeah, every year I want to make sure that we do something, and this has been a little bit different. So I think this has worked out really well.
Yeah,
And for everyone else, I want to thank you for watching this, being a part of this, and I want to thank the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center for their partnership in the Small Business Breakthrough Program. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month at Small Business Breakthroughs. Thank you.
great. Thanks, Mike.